Bert Ely has some strong opinions on that. He's a banking and housing analyst who wrote a book about the future of the housing giants. His co-author, interestingly enough, was one of the FCIC commissioners that we've been hearing from, Peter Wallison. So thank you so much, Bert, for joining me today. We are looking and listening into the postmortem here on what happened to Fannie and Freddie. We're not hearing too much about what should be happening to them some 18 months after they were put in government conservatorship. When you've been listening in today, what have you learned here? I mean, what's the value of the conversation underway?
Well, I think first of all, I can't say that I learned that much because I've been so close to these companies for over a decade. But still, I think it was valuable to hear from the former executives what some of the shortcomings were in the companies. It confirms what Peter Wallison and I and others had been saying for years. But again, this is a postmortem and autopsy of not just why these two companies failed, but why the GSE concept failed, because I think it's increasingly recognized that whatever happens in housing finance going forward, Fannie and Freddie will not be reconstituted in the same way they were before.
Well, we know something will be different, right? It's got to be at this point. But can the government be in the loan guarantee business here in a way that is also rewarding to shareholders who voluntarily own stakes of those companies? I mean, can you have both concepts exist and have an effective organization?
I don't think so, and I think this gets to the root of why Fannie and Freddie failed, because they had these conflicting objectives of meeting a public policy objective while also trying to enrich their shareholders, and that was a conflict that finally blew up on them. And while there's no consensus as to what should be done with Fannie and Freddie going forward, it's clear that they're not going to be reconstituted the way they were before.
Well, keeping mortgage rates affordable to trying to get Americans to go out and buy up some of these homes that are just sitting on the market is a prime concern on the economic front, on the recovery front of things. When you're looking at Fannie and Freddie, you know, making or backing nearly half of the nation's mortgages here, how do we continue to see the housing market recover without changing Fannie and Freddie in the immediate?
Well, in my opinion, politically, it's just not feasible to think of changing the role that Fannie and Freddie play for at least the next couple of years while the country is working through the housing finance crisis. It's a matter of just not rocking the boat. The big question is, once we have worked through the crisis, we're clearly on the other side of it, then it's not so much a matter of what happens to Fannie and Freddie, but what is the best way to finance housing in the United States. And something that is just now coming on the table is to bring to the United States a well-established financing technique used in Europe called covered bonds, where mortgage lenders would make mortgages and then keep them on balance sheet, fund them with covered bonds, rather than selling into the secondary market. And that's, I think, the way we need to go.
Interesting, an interesting model that we're going to look into a lot more. Thank you so much, Bert Ely and Company, joining us today.